Welcome to the Money Mentors Podcast.
Thanks for joining us here on Money Mentors. Your Money Mentors this week, Gerald Green over there. Marcus Grost also joining us here in studio this week. As always, if you have questions for your Money Mentors, you can find us online at matsonfinancial.com. Warren Buffett, he's made headlines recently with his annual letter to shareholders. That's out now, and his Berkshire Hathaway reports record annual profits. And Buffett always shares some really interesting nuggets of wisdom in these annual letters. A lot of people look forward to these, but we always like to go back to his famous rules of investing that he's actually relied on for years now. Listen to this.
The first rule in investment is don't lose. And the second rule in investment is don't forget the first rule. And that's all the rules there are. I mean, if you buy things for far below what they're worth and you buy a group of them, you basically don't lose money.
Yep, he's stuck with it for years now, and it's important to note that while Buffett has done extremely well lately, his portfolio still does not beat the S&P guys. So is there a lesson for us average investors in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess one thing to look at here is just because you're not beating the benchmark or the S&P 500 every year doesn't mean you're not on track for your goals, right? Mm-hmm. Here at Matson Financial, we want to also manage risk for our clients. We don't want our clients to have excess risk if they don't need it in retirement, right? So it's not really a one-size-fits-all approach here, but we structure portfolios based on individuals and families' their needs in retirement.
So specific goals. So when you're mapping out, what someone needs to live the lifestyle they want in retirement, that's how you're setting their goals, not based on what you think the market might do, right?
When I sit down with a client, I'm not saying we're going to go for a 10 or 15% rate of return, then we'll celebrate and look at the statements and say how well we did, right? That's not a plan for success. In 2019, the S&P 500 was up almost 27, 28%. 2020 hit. We had COVID. The S&P 500 dropped 45% in 6 weeks. It was very volatile. In 2022, not only did we see the stock market go down about 20%, we saw the bond market go down about 14, 15%. Now, 23 and 24, both positive over 20%. So if you try to beat the S&P 500, you're going to lose. Unless you have a DeLorean that goes 88 miles an hour, you're going to lose. Yep. What you have to focus on is, this is what I have for retirement, whether that's $200,000, whether that's $2 million. What you want to look at is, what is the income that I need to do what I want? Mm-hmm. And maybe those things are more advanced in lifestyle than when you were working, and that's okay. But that's where I come in and say, well, your entire working years, you were spending $5,000-$6,000 a month, and you told me you were doing everything you wanted to do. Now in retirement, you want to spend $10,000 a month, but you didn't save enough. You could do that for a couple years, but then now you're out of money. So right. You have to understand what you saved in order to understand what you can take as withdrawal, and that's what drives the investment strategy. It's not me trying to beat the S&P 500 or beat the NASDAQ. My goal, my perfect plan is when a client retires, if they have $1 million, at the end of plan, I want them to have $1 million. Yeah. So it's going to show that I didn't double my money. I didn't grow it. No, you did. You just used all of the income throughout your lifetime, because I don't know if you're going to live to be 85 or 108. And eventually what's going to happen is I can't take that type of risk as a fiduciary to constitute what you're taking out every year, and you're going to see your account balances go down. Yeah. That's just what we do here at Matson Financial. Let's get growth when it's prudent within your risk profile, because we know when you're in your 80s, 90s, you're 107, you're on the Today Show on their on their jelly jar or whatever it is. Right? You still have the income and you're not worried about money, whatever that lifestyle is. It's not Lamborghinis and Ferraris, but it's having the ability to choose what you're doing.
Well, something else that's been brought up over this past couple of weeks in the letter, too, is just how much Warren Buffett has in cash holdings right now. A lot of people look for that figure every time that they publish this every year. Warren, much like you guys at Matson Financial Services, sometimes likes to have some on the side ready to pounce on opportunities when they present themselves. I think that's kind of an interesting part of your investment philosophy as well.
Yeah, I think so too, and that's exactly what we do here at Matson is provide you a diversified portfolio, whether it's cash sitting on the sidelines, and while that cash is on the sidelines, we want to make sure we're getting an interest rate on that cash. Right now, it's anywhere from 3.5% to 4%. We use CDs, money market funds, treasury bills, fixed index annuities from time to time, just depending on what that client's specific needs are. But on top of that, it's also not just stocks, too. It's bonds and also non-correlated assets. So think of things like gold, think of things like silver, real estate, hedge funds. Just building a diversified portfolio for our clients is what we do.
Now, one of the other big things that Buffett reveals in his annual letter is that at 94 years old now, he plans to hand over the reins to his successor, Greg Abel, soon. Now, he does not give an exact date for this, but he admits he now uses a cane and signals the time's coming soon. So no doubt, even in his 90s, though, Buffett's made some good investment moves. And I would imagine there's a time coming for most of us when it's still time to hand over the investment-making decisions to someone else. I would imagine it's hard for him, and I would imagine, too, it's a tough conversation for some of your clients, but how do you handle that when the time comes?
This is actually a relatively easy conversation for our clients.
Really?
Because this is something I talk about in the very first meeting. When I first sit across the table from them is our plan isn't just about getting you to retirement, but through it. There's different stages of life. There's different stages of retirement that your plan is going to have to provide for. And one of those stages is that alive and not well stage. Whether it's a cognitive issue, whether it's a physical issue, like you can't do what you normally did very well. So it's a matter of, we have those conversations early. We talk about, hey, if you can't do this, or if something were to happen to you, what would you want to have happen? We start bringing that conversation up well before we have to have it, so we understand what your perspective is well before it's needed. So we're making a plan to have a plan. Okay, that sounds a little redundant, but I mean, it is what it is, and that's what we want to build it. We don't know when or if it's going to happen. I just want to know that if it does happen for my client, that I've got something in place. I know I can talk to this person to make sure that my clients' needs are being taken care of. They appreciate that. Most of the time, it's a tough conversation because no one's ever had it with them before. That's the only reason it's a tough conversation. And they don't like to have it because we don't like to think of our own mortality.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, you're servicing yourself and your family members a lot better by having that conversation as early as possible.
Marcus Gary talks about sometimes it's the spouse who wants that for the other spouse, right? So a lot of times it's maybe the husband's handling the investment decisions. He knows his wife doesn't necessarily want to do that if something happens to him. So they'll actually bring it up in those conversations with you, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And not even just the spouse the whole time. It's also other beneficiaries. Think of the kids or the grandkids. It's also important to have those conversations with the kids or the grandkids and educate them along the way so they're not caught off guard in the event that mom or dad is in a long-term care situation. So we want to make sure we're educating them along the way too.
Want weekly lessons from your money mentors? Yes. Hit the subscribe button now and listen every weekend on Wood Radio.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Fee-based financial planning and investment services are offered by Matson Financial Services, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance products and services offered through Lakeview Financial Group, LLC, Matson Financial Services, LLC, and Lakeview Financial Group are affiliated. To find out if Matson Financial Services is licensed in your state, please call 800-536-8907.